that doesn't work. Anyway, so my name is Elisa Camber, and I work for Pixplicity, which is a tech-driven agency, design agency. We're based in Amsterdam, in the Netherlands, and we're also in the US, in New York. I'm also the organizer for the GDG and the Women Tech Makers in the Netherlands, and I'm quite a frequent traveler with going in a lot of conferences like DevFests and some other conferences, mostly for talks, but I just love meeting the community. So please find me after the talk to talk to me. So about the schedule a bit. First, we will talk about the battle between companies about the virtual assistants, and then we will see how to design one, the integrations, the identity, and finally how to personalize the experience. Now, if you've seen the description of the talk, I also had about transactions, but I decided to skip that one because it gets really technical and you will need some web skills to follow up, which I wasn't quite sure if everyone will be able to follow. And also, it's quite a straightforward procedure, so you can just go to the documentation. It's very well documented, and check it out from over there. So virtual assistant, it's a war between 5 companies. It's Amazon, Google, Apple, Microsoft, and Samsung. Well, theoretically, it's just between 2 companies. It's Amazon with Alexa and Google with a Google Assistant. Looking back in time, we can see that approximately every decade there is a major shift in computing. And with every shift, there is an explosion of new devices and new services that are coming in surface. Also, the users, with every single technological advantage, they are expecting your technology to be even smarter and to help them even more with their everyday lives. Standalone devices, wearables, cars, fridges, even bathtubs. You name it and it's there. And it's waiting for your command. The number of supported languages is also continuously growing. But why should you care? You're developers, what should you care about this? Why do Amazon and Google focus so much in having their assistants constantly within earshots? Well, speech is much natural to humans. It's the first thing that we're learning how to do, and it's our main way of communication. It's also much easier for you to rephrase something or to even repeat something than actually getting your device, like any device, even if it's a laptop or like your smartphone or anything like this, starting to typing or tapping, finding the information that you want while you can just talk to it. It's also much faster. You can continue doing whatever you were doing before that and whatever you were doing before that. For this presentation, I will be focusing more in the actions on Google, but the conversational tips that I'm going to give you can also be applied to any conversational app for any single platform. I do have a few slides that get a bit more technical, but they don't require any skills, any web skills, or anything more knowledge to just follow. A quick reminder, what is the differences between the Google Assistant, the actions on Google, and the dialog flow? So the Google Assistant is the bot that will reply to you every time that you say, "Okay, Google." While the actions on Google is the platform that you can actually create and manage those actions, like your actions, which you can see as an extension of the functionality of the Google Assistant. And finally, the dialog flow is the platform where we are going to build that conversational app, or that action, if you like the word. And let's see about the app flow. So the user says something to any device, And then we have the dialog flow that will get the query and the intent of the user. It will fulfill this from your backend or from your responses or from anything else. And then it will get the actionable data. It will return it to the user with the response that it should. And how this works with the Google Assistant is pretty much the same. You will say something to the Google Assistant that I want to talk to that action. Then the Google Assistant will get you the right action. And then the flow is the same. Like you will go to the backend, and from the backend you will get the response. And from the response you're going to get back to your users. You could say, like, especially if you've ever experimented with the Dialogflow app platform, any of you? Just one hand, okay. Two. So, yeah, if you go to the Dialogflow platform, you will see that it's actually quite easy to create an action. You could say that it's a piece of cake. But there is an incredible 85% failure rate. And with the retention rates at 15%, a conversational app that wasn't too much thought put into that will never, ever get you to that teeny tiny green slice over there. And even though those numbers rise every day, the only way forward is still to design an intelligent agent. And yes, I said design. The lack of a graphical UI by no means mean that there is not a UI and a UX. And the design process is even more important than when actually designing for a graphical user interface. Conversational design is about the conversation of the flow and the underlying logic behind this. Something that works for a graphical user interface will hardly ever work as is to a voice app, a conversational app. And thus, someone has to start building from the bottom to top when you're redesigning something to be conversational. And what we design for is called a VUI, or else it's a voice user interface. So we have the GUI, which is the graphic user interface. It is the screens, the displays. And then we have now the VUI. At this presentation, I could also rename this Things I Wish I Knew a year before. But explicitly, we're doing a lot of conversational apps. And unfortunately, I made a lot of those mistakes, if not all of them. And I wouldn't like you to do the same. So, first of all, before starting designing about any actions or anything like this, you need to question yourself. You need to question one very simple thing. Like, is this an action for a conversation? And even though it's very simple, a lot of times we skip this and we just go into delivering something that no one is going to find a use in the real world. And if you follow that link, you will find a list that Google provides, and it will make your decision a bit easier. And if that action that you want to make a conversational app for is something that the user can do while multitasking, or if it's something that it takes a few steps to complete, then it's probably a good conversational topic. So tip number one, is this topic for a conversational app? Would you have a conversation with a real person about this topic? Moving on, you need to identify your use cases, you need to identify your users, and based on those, you need to create your persona. Your system persona should be based on your target users, and it also should stay true to your branding principles. It is conveyed through the voice, through the tone, and through the choice of the phrases and the words. A distinct, easy-to-go personality is a good design for an agent. One of the most important part of the conversational apps is keeping your agent's personality consistent through the whole experience. And a bit careful with the word consistent there. You want your agent to be consistent, as in having the same characteristic throughout the whole experience. That said, your app should have variety in the responses and the way you interact. For screen experiences, you want to keep the UI as it is, as consistent it is, so the users can just find what they want really easy without having to relearn your new UI every time. Take a banking app, for instance. Like if your banking app changes a UI every, let's say, a week, then you will get really frustrating relearning that UI and finding what you want, what you need. In a conversation, though, it's quite different. You will hardly ever say the same thing with the same tone and the same voice, even for repetitive tasks. So what should your app do? So tip number 2 is consistency in the agent's personality, but variety in the experience. A consistent personality builds loyalty and trust, while the variety provides a fun and meaningful experience and direction. When you have decided on your agent's persona, then you will need to build some sample dialogues on top of that. And those sample dialogues is actually your foundation for what you're going to build in the Dialogflow platform. So 3 is create high-level flowcharts. And by high level, I mean something like this. Just focus in making a decision tree for the core functionality of your app, and don't try to make a decision tree for every single flow that the conversation could go to. You'll get really, really lost, and you will have to start from scratch again and again and again and again, a lot of times. And something that I also found very useful is to create a decision tree for the core functionality, and then for every feature to create a new decision tree, and then combine all those, and then going to build something. So 4, we don't speak the same way that we write. And this is really easy to understand if you take any novel in your mind that was transcribed into a movie or a TV series or something like this. The dialogues in the book are hardly ever the same that they are in the movie. And let's take another example. Let's assume that we have an app and we need the user's address, and then we have to ask the user's address, but the address was not matched, so we need to provide the users an error message. Sorry. So here you can see the difference between the graphic user interface and the voice user interface, and how the interaction of those two, the differences between those two interactions. You need to keep your language clear, conversational, simple, and friendly. A conversation can also break for too many reasons. A wrong transcription, and user intent that wasn't matched. Someone said something in a way that you didn't know, or you didn't handle in your app. For whatever reason the conversation breaks, the most important part is to actually repair it. And there are many ways to repair it without apologizing. If you apologize to your users for every time that you didn't understand something, then it's going to be very annoying and very frustrating. What you can do instead is to prompt your user and provide alternatives or other paths that the user can follow. We'll see 4 examples for how you can do that, and the differences on how apology vs alternative changes the whole experience. And each example actually could be its own design tip I guess. So example A, what's the forecast for tomorrow? Sorry, I don't know how to help with that. I want to know the weather for tomorrow. Oh, in Nizhny Novgorod, it's going to be sunny tomorrow. Well, yeah, that's not very helpful. It's really annoying, and like you don't really get your users' attention. Example B. I want to find a hotel in Amsterdam. Oh, cool. Let's get your hotel room. Which city you want to research in? Well, I just told you. You have to make sure that you expect that your users are going to be informative. And when they give you an information, make sure that you don't ask about this again. And now let's see the difference between the apology and the alternative. So I want 4 black whiteboard markers. 4 black whiteboard markers added to your cart. Do you need anything else? We provide follow-up questions. We move the conversation forward. And then we have the other, like if we don't have the black whiteboard markers, what happens? Sorry, we don't have black markers now. Okay, bye. Well, your user is very discouraged in making a purchase. He's probably really annoyed. And you also just ended the conversation without the user making a purchase. So the alternative would be, it seems that we're out of black markers right now. How about red or green? Do you see the difference there? And let's say that we do have the black markers, but we also have some offers. If the user would buy those markers from your website and you had something extra to offer to him, then they would say it, they would see it like with a banner or with a message somewhere. But if you have a conversational app, you have to make sure that you include those to your designs. Because if I buy those black whiteboard markers from the conversational app, and the conversational app doesn't inform me about any offers that you have, but then I open my laptop, the website, and I found like, oh, if I made the purchase from here, then I would have the offer. Then I'm not going to use the conversational app again. I'm going to use your website because it's easier for me to find the information that I really need. Number 7, design for the whole experience. For each device, there is a different way of interaction. And we need to make sure that we don't just provide for the spoken prompts, but we also take advantage of the visual prompts. And an example is like this. If we only have the Google Home, then we could just speak out the response. But if the user is using his phone or his tablet or anything, and actually has a display, then we can get more information to him by providing some carousels or some recommendation sheets or any visuals that we can have. We can decide whether we want our agent to just speak the response, if we wanted to speak a different response if there is a screen available or not, or even if it doesn't make sense, like if you say, show me some cat pictures and you're just talking to the Google Home, we want to take that intent and just fulfill it on another device like the phone or a tablet. We can do it very easily, but by some helpers that they are in the dialog flow. Expect the unexpected and bring it to life with small talk. So one very, very often common reason that a conversation can break is because we don't enable small talk. What's your name? Say that again. What's your name? What was that? Aww. But we also forget to get exit paths. And this is a real example from the reminder from Google. And what they have in your phone is that you can just set a reminder for a specific place without saying any time. But apparently on the Google Home or on the Assistant, that doesn't work. And I use it a lot. And we end up with conversations like this. Remind me at work to reply to that email. What time do you want me to remind you? No, I don't want the time. I want you to remind me at work. What time do you want me to remind you? Cancel it. To set a time, and then it continues talking. And this is so frustrating. I just want that reminder. And they don't have an exit path there. I say cancel, and they still don't cancel it. Wrapping up with the design, just remember, a user interface is like a joke. If you have to explain it, it's not good. You're not going to train your users to use your app. You have to make sure that your app is built for your users. So we have built the perfect agent. Now what? Is it only available for Pixels and Google Homes? Well, thankfully not. There is an integration for 15 platforms that just require one click. And you also have to just fill in some tokens or some IDs depending on which platform you want. And for all the rest, well, thankfully there is an SDK or a library or something like that, and like a repository in GitHub. Whew. Identity. One of the most consuming actions is signing in an app and signing up your users. It requires a lot of typing. It requires a lot of clicking. And if you want to ask your users like email addresses, phone numbers, real-world addresses, this is never going to work in a conversational app. You can still do it if you really, really want to, but it's going to be a horrible experience trying to give your phone number through a voice app, or even worse, your email. And I lost my train of thoughts. Yeah, so you can also, like if you do it like this, and if you don't sign in your users properly, you might end up sending a package to the wrong address, which I'm pretty sure that the users are not going to like. So a great solution is the Google sign-in. It requires just one tapping from the users, and it's very fast. It's secure because it's a Google sign-in, and it can also be followed up by a sign up to your own platform. And this, of course, is very useful for multi-platform experiences and for getting your service in more and more platforms available. You can also use this if the user has already signed up for your platform with a non-Google account. And finally, we get to personalization. Personalization is the next most important stuff, the most important task to nail when you design a conversational app. Whether it's calendar events, payment accounts, or something else, with the account linking, you are going to be able to provide a unique experience for each user. Making your users feeling unique will pay off. And the first impression is really the most important one. So, for instance, you can just welcome them in their own language. You can also welcome them in different ways. If it's a returning user, you can say something else. If it's a new user, you can say something differently. Or you can actually save their preferences, so they won't have to provide you the same information again and again, which can get very annoying. And something extra. We're returning a response from the Google Assistant. You can use something that it's called the speech synthesis markup languages. And it looks something like this. What it does is that it makes your response a bit more lifelike. You can add pauses, you can pronounce some things in the way that you want. You can do a lot of things like this. To rewind, We found out about the bottle, why it's important for you to actually have a look in the conversational apps, what the most important part of it is, which is the design, and how not to just start building something without having your foundations there. And the foundations is the users, the target users, the use cases, and your agent's persona. Then we saw about the integrations. After you build the perfect agent, how you can provide it to many more, to many platforms, and thus reach to more people. Identity, how, without asking your users to provide you with email addresses or phone numbers or real-life addresses, information that you need in order to provide the best experience. And finally, how to personalize your agent for each platform, but also for each user to match their needs. Thank you.
Thank you very much for outstanding presentation, Elisa. And your questions are coming.
Is it possible to make the agent remember the topic of conversation within the whole session like we do in real life? Yes. It's actually called contexts, and you can manually manipulate them either for the code or from the platform. And you can either reset them if the conversation goes into a different path. Let's say that I ask about the weather, and I ask the weather about a specific place. And then I don't want after like to learn about a specific place, but then I want to find out about specific dates. That I can reset that context instead of the place to go for the dates. If I want to keep both, that's actually fine as well. Should we consider cultural differences to not let agent to be rude? Definitely. Rude? Yeah. Definitely you need to do that. An inclusive design is something that it's different, it's the same throughout any design. If that's a product, if that's an app, if that's a conversational app, anything, it has to be inclusive. How to protect my users' privacy? Is there any way to continue conversation with my own server app? Example, pharmacy app. Users want to place orders, your medicine with voice, but they don't want Google to know about order contents. Yes, it's actually possible, and we've done that for one of our conversational apps because it's about private information that our clients didn't want to be on cloud. So what we did is that we take the intent from the dialog flow, and then we just send back a response that makes sense for us, like action required, and then it can be like specific drugs or something like this. And then you just take that action and move the conversation forward offline from the dialog flow. Any solutions to base authentication on voice itself? Not with Dialogflow, not as far as I am concerned. Although Google is doing it for just accessing your calendar, for instance, but it's not available yet for your own actions. Moving through decision tree decides assistant to keep context and update it after each stage. Are there any guidelines for context updates? Yes, there is actually a great recommendation for every of those things. There is a great recommendation. For the conversational design, there is a recommendation. For the dialog flow itself, there is a recommendation. For the actions of Google, the same. There are some things that you will have to learn, unfortunately, the hard way. But you can see for the context over there, there is also a very active community on that. So if you just post something in the community or on Twitter or somewhere, you are going to get help. What do you think about future? GUI, VUI, what will be next? I do believe that voice is the future. And the reason for that is that we managed to go like from clicking to typing, no, from typing to clicking, then to tapping, and now we can actually interact with it the real, like as we talk to each other. The only problem that I see there is some things that, like you're in a bus, you don't want to start shouting to a conversational app. Okay, just remind me this. But I do believe that at some point we will have wearables that we will be able to do it. And I don't say that those freaking glasses that you have to put over your whole head and stuff like this, but some earbuds, for instance, or something like this that will be really sensitive and you will be able to do it. That's a personal opinion, of course. Huh? What is the most successful VUI application in your opinion, except Google? Good question. Huh. I'll come back to that. I have to think about it. Have you heard about a Russian company developed virtual assistant called Alice, created by Yandex? If yes, how do you compare it with Google's? I'm sorry, I haven't. That's a first for me, but I'll definitely Google it. So that goes here. You know, it really looks like a next level. However, what are you thinking about next level after that? What could be next after the VUI? Ooh. I don't think that it's going to be something the next from the VUI, because it's not that we're ever going to get rid of the GUI, so it's not just following up on that, but I think that virtual reality is going to take here very strong, and not virtual reality actually, but augmented reality. I think that it has more real applications to the world. What is more important, to make an assistant sound more human, so users would like using it even without results, or orient it more to personal needs? To orient it more to personal needs. And something that none of the companies want to do is to actually make your assistant like fooling people that it's a real human. And there is a really good reason behind this. There are a lot of studies that show that when you know that you have a machine that you're talking to, you're a bit more tolerant than when you have a person, because you know that it's not that smart and you don't expect it to be that smart, so you don't get frustrated if it doesn't pick up something. Other conversation between the user and the backend encrypted. Any privacy concerns the developers should keep in mind? Well, yeah, keeping your backend safe, but also if you want like a very secure way of communicating between the dialog flow and your backend, there is something called the Dialogflow Enterprise version, and it has the security of the Google Cloud, which is like the best that you can get, I guess. Do you provide statistics about customers, if customers are happy with agent, or about other info from customers? In our apps we don't, but you can use the Google Analytics for that. And just in various places in your fulfillment, if there is an intent matched, like frustration, for instance, or something like this, then you can do it. And there is also some Google APIs that can tell you if the user is frustrated or not, or angry or whatever. Do you know if Google is going to understand deaf and dumb, engage, and react on it? I don't really understand the question. So, who's this question?
Okay, you can discuss it during.
Okay, let's discuss it afterwards, because I didn't really get the question. But yeah. Yeah, I don't. Sorry, I don't get the handwriting actually. Could you explain in details from integration with a native GUI app could be done without having to invent a separate VUI app, but to navigate instead with an ordinary GUI app? Integration with a native. What do you mean by, yeah, let's discuss this as well, because it says like, without having to invent a separate VUI app, but this is what you're building, a separate VUI app. So I'm not quite sure that I understand the question as well, so we can just take it offline. All right. Thank you very, very much.